Welcome to the Subjective Professor podcast, where we reject coercion and hypocrisy. This is episode 135, and we are going to talk about freedom because it's July 4th, 2024. And so let's talk about freedom. Now, I was born in the United States to Asian parents who were extremely proud of where they came from, primarily because they were, one might call, the elite of that country. And so they came here to study, and they had me. I was born in America, and so I was raised with American propaganda. And so I loved America. And it was really hard for me because I would come home and I was pretty much told, hey, you're Korean. You got to learn Korean. You got to learn all the customs. And in those days, it was really hard to see anyone else who was Korean in the 60s, right? You didn't see people like that except on Sunday. And even then, a lot of the kids were younger than me, or if they were the same age as me, we only saw each other for an hour once a week. So it wasn't, that attachment to Korean society wasn't really that strong, if there was any at all. And so I really identified with the American, I'll call it propaganda, the image that they tried to project of itself. And I was really proud to be living in America, to be American, which was interesting, right? So at home, I was told I was Korean, and then I go outside and everyone called me a chink, But in my heart, I believed that I was an American, and I was, I remember watching the Olympics once in the 70s. I think it was 74, 75. Um, and, every time the United States won a gold medal and they would play the national anthem, man, I was so proud. I wept, gotta tell you, I cried. I was so proud. Um, I would tell my college students, when I was teaching there, because it would come up that people would say, "Oh, you hate America," and I said, "No, if you cut me, I will bleed red, white, and blue," which is kind of funny. But anyway, so I was really all into this sort of pro-America, proud to be an American kind of mentality. And then I watched this movie called Braveheart, which had Mel Gibson in it, playing William Wallace and the Scottish attempt for independence. And so I really liked that movie. I haven't seen it in a while, but nevertheless, it was a pretty cool movie. And at one point, of course, William Wallace is captured, he's tortured, and he's disemboweled. And after he's disemboweled, the torturer says, "Oh, the prisoner would like to say a word." And Mel Gibson yells, "Freedom!" And it was like, yeah, man. I remember coming out of the theater saying, yeah, freedom, that's what it's about. And then I realized that the freedom he was fighting for was just simply freedom from English tyranny so that he could be terrorized and ruled by corrupt Scottish nobles. And I was thinking, that's just kind of goofy. That can't be it. Now, at the same time, I watched that movie. I'm looking around at all these cool people, right? So when I wasn't in the Korean situation, right, at church, when I was with Americans, proper Americans, right? I rarely said much, right? I would just pick a corner, and I would be quiet, hoping no one would notice the Asian in the room, and I would just watch everyone, how they behaved, the dynamics, the social dynamics, and whatever. And so people who I thought were really cool, living on the edge kind of thing, I thought, wow, they're brave, trendsetters, whatever. And then and that was it. And we got older, and after like 20 years or so, because Facebook came along, you could kind of reconnect with a lot of people that you haven't seen in like 20, 30 years. And so I started catching up with them, and I realized that some of the most edgiest people have become status quo types, right? They kind of towed the party line. They weren't edgy at all anymore. They were just kind of fuddy-duddy establishment types, So I thought that was really interesting. Uh, Maybe they still do drug. I didn't do drugs, but I mean, ideologically speaking, somehow I became the hippie, which was kind of insane, right? Because I don't have long hair, I don't smoke dope, I don't do any of these typical things which are associated with being a hippie. I don't have any tattoos or nothing. And so I thought this was really, really interesting, like that whole phenomenon of how these edgy people who thumb their nose at all the rules, now we're all about following the rules, no one is above the law kind of thing. So not everyone wants to be free. I get that. Fine. Maybe it's out of fear. But I was thinking, the more I think about it, I think it's because they're comfortable, right? So people who are comfortable because they're happy with their lives as they are right now, they don't care about freedom, right? In fact, what they want to do is maintain that state of comfort, right? And so they don't need things to change. They don't need freedom because they're quite happy the way they are, which is extremely subjective, right? It's almost as if they say, well, I'm comfortable, you should be comfortable too. If you're not comfortable, that's your problem, right? It's your failing. It's because you didn't do what you were supposed to do. If you did do what you were supposed to do, then you'd be as comfortable as me. So why don't you get your life in order so you can be as comfortable as me? Uh, so a lot of people want to deprive everyone else of their freedom. But I think that the less comfortable you are, in other words, the more problems that you have, the more you want to be free. You want to be free to create, to explore, to discover, to research. Okay. And so one might even be able to say that the system itself, the institution, you'll see where I'm going with this, the institution is the reason you have the issues that you have. Just in the same way that it's the institution, which is why some people have fewer problems than others, right? So whatever system that you establish, right? I go into this with the whole racialization, the implication that it has for race, but as soon as you establish a situation, a set of rules, some people are going to be able to excel given those rules, and other people are not going to do as well. And so the people who don't do as well, yeah, they want freedom. Okay. And the people who are, of course, prospering because of the rules that are in place, they're looking at everyone else and saying, why are you doing that? Why are you complaining? There's nothing wrong with the system. The system is perfect, right? And it's you that is misbehaving, that is criminal. All right. And so these people who benefit from the system, they will resist you, they'll fight you, they'll call you names, right? And they had the advantage of falling back on certain rules in society, and so they can wag their finger at you, right? So we want to have a situation where we have the freedom to be able to explore and find better solutions, keeping in mind that not every idea that someone may come up with will be a good idea. We mentioned in the previous episode, F around and find out. So some ideas really horrible, okay? But sometimes, right, a very small percentage of these solutions are in fact revolutionary solutions. So where are the solutions? Like, where can I find these solutions? And they are certainly not going to be found on the news, and not from people who seek to control you, to have authority over you, to want to feel better by thinking they're better than you, right? You'll never get it from them, right? Because they want you to remain under them, and for them to always be smarter than you, better looking than you, more popular than you. They want that. Okay. And so things never change from high school, you see. So people in the state who buy into the state, who support the state, yeah, they're not going to help you to find your solutions. So I go into where the solutions are in episode 21 and 22. And that is, we can't easily find these solutions because we're in our mental box. We're in a box. And so we can't find those solutions because we don't know them. So what is the box? And I talk about the box a lot more in those episodes, but the box does have a shape. It does have something which prevents us from seeing, that is, knowing and comprehending better ideas. The first wall of the box is knowledge, right? You just simply don't know enough, right? You stop reading. Your source of information is only mass media, propagandists for the state. And because you only are consuming that information, you don't know all of this other information out there. You don't know about um, thorium, right? All you can think of is uranium. So you don't know about thorium. You don't know that Europeans recycle their spent uranium, right? So there's not only the uranium plants, but there's also recycled uranium plants, right? And so they don't have as much nuclear waste as we have. Like we don't have a Yucca Mountain, where we stick all of that depleted uranium. No, they use that stuff, right? Well, we're not interested here. So the more knowledge you have, the more you realize that there are solutions to the problems that you are wrestling with, right? And these days, people are taught to wallow in their self-pity, which, yeah, I mean, if that's what you want to do, fine. But if you really don't want to be wallowing in your self-pity, then you got to get more knowledge. I mean, just by that, you can kind of tell what kind of pastor I am. Not a very compassionate one, right? Perhaps by a lot of people's definition. The second wall that most people will encounter is their morality, their sense of right and wrong. So I'm not just talking about religion in the narrow sense. I'm talking about religion the way that I use the word religion, which is morality, your sense of right and wrong. And it doesn't have to be anything so-called spiritual. It can be anything considered taboo, like doing drugs, right? So our morality challenges us. It confines us, it restricts us. And, we're free to maintain the morality that we have, but there's always a cost. Okay. So some people will just say, okay, I'm okay with this, and so I don't care. Okay. But even though you might say certain options are off the table for you, that's okay because there's plenty more options, right? We're never confined to a limited number of options. And if all of them are go against my morality, it doesn't mean there's no hope for you. It just means you have to do some more digging and find some more options, right? So the drug war would be one example of morality that would be okay for me to simple enough for me to talk about on this podcast episode. A lot of people are really have a problem with drugs, but what would be the solution to the drug problem? Well, see, we run into a lot of moral issues there. All right, so that's the second wall. The third wall is law, legislation. What's legal and what is not. When I taught honors, I was an honors professor, honors program professor for a while, and then they kicked me out because honor students just cannot think beyond law. That's why they're honor students, right? So this is legal, that's illegal. And my lectures were all about, okay, let's explore what is criminalized. Let's explore, what is illegal and try to figure out what is good. And people just they just lost their poop and everything. But anyway, uh, so sometimes laws exist not for your protection or for your safety, but they're there usually to protect some corporate interest, right? So it's not about making your life better, it's rather turning you into a criminal. So what I would always say is that if the law is standing in your way for you to find your solution, then you have to find a loophole, right? Keeping in mind the second wall, which is morality, right? Because there are a lot of things which might be, legal in other countries, but morally speaking is reprehensible, right? But there's always that problem, and so you have to sort of figure out what is actually permissible, what is actually, something you can live with, and something which probably you'll regret later on. But I would always say, to all of my students, if you really want to find solutions, then you have to find loopholes. You have to find the fuzzy edge of these laws, and that's where you got to start, right? So it's okay until you're too successful, right? And so if your idea is so fantastic and so good that you make a crap ton of money, well, that's when the government then starts taking a look at you, right? So there's this guy who was selling his textbooks on eBay, and he realized that the books in his homeland, Thailand, were a fraction of the cost. Uh, they were selling them here in the United States, and so he basically emailed all of his relatives. He was a Cornell student. He emailed all his relatives and said, "Buy all the textbooks you can see, anything you can find, and send him on a slow boat over to America." And he made $1.5 million, I think, his first year he was doing this. And that's when they had that copyright lawsuit. Do you really own anything? So when you sell something on eBay, do you really own it or not? And the claim was from the publishers that even though you bought the book, right, you can't resell it, right? Especially you can't buy a book from a different country where the price is a fraction, come over to America and resell it here. You're not allowed to do it because it's not your book. I don't know if you remember that case. It was a while ago, but anyway. So the law is not there for your protection. The law is there to prevent you from exploring really awesome ideas. And those awesome ideas, of course, then become a threat to the corporate establishment, right? They can't make as much money as they did before. Okay, so you got to get rid of all of those laws, right? Or at least realize what is the cause of the problems that you're wrestling with. And the final wall that people have to sort of learn how to get through in order to find some of the solutions. And this wall was for me, right, personally, and that's language. So even though my parents taught me Korean, I really didn't understand the words. Like I could literally understand the words, but I didn't understand the culture and the baggage and you know everything else that was lost in translation, if you will. But if you're not a second language, like if your family, everyone only speaks one language, then you have no idea what I'm talking about. But if there is a language difference, I don't care how well you think you can speak that language, there is an aspect of it which is lost in translation, and this becomes a wall. What I did discover also when my Korean comprehension and speaking ability got a lot better, was that I was able to see things from a different perspective, right? And so the grammar of a language shapes the way that you see the world. I go into this a lot more in the previous episodes, so I won't go into it further. But the grammar really does dictate how you shape the world and how you perceive it, and therefore go about trying to solve situations that you encounter. Very, very helpful. It was a lifesaver for me. So anyway, so those four walls are the walls that I've worked out, that I've written about anyway. And that's where the solutions are to your problems. In other words, the problems exist because of the box that you have put yourself in. It doesn't have to be that way, right? And in order to be able to explore, in order to be able to find those solutions, you need freedom. A lot of people today, and I mentioned this on the Sunday message that I preached to my church, a lot of people are trading their freedom for safety, but they get neither. And that should remind you of Milton Friedman's often quoted uh, phrase where he says, freedom for equality. And if you try for both, right, or you prioritize equality over freedom, you get neither. Why is that? Because freedom is safety. Freedom is equality, right? It's the equalizer. It's the thing that keeps you safe because it's within safety, or excuse me, it's within freedom that you find safety, right? Solutions for danger, right? solutions for flooding, solutions for tornadoes, solutions for starvation, right? It's within the freedom that you can find safety. And therefore, it's within freedom that you can find equality as well, right? But when you find and try look for and explore and try to propose things, it must be organic. You cannot lord it over everybody else. Well, anyway, that's a take on freedom. I hope you have a wonderful Insurrection Day, and I'll talk to you again soon.